Awesome. So this is the Liminal Podcast, as we're calling it for now. I'm the co-host. My name is Gabe. I am a 24-year-old male, recent college grad, brother to Liminal Bot IRL.
Yeah. All right. So I'm the host. Of course, I'm Liminal Bot, the founder of Liminal Bot, and I'll be the host for this episode. Cool. Let you start it out.
So I guess we could kind of give a general breakdown of what we're going for with the podcast too. So episode 1 is kind of our pilot episode. We wanted to focus on Backrooms lore, Liminality, some questions from the poll. But going forward, I think we're going to try to diversify outside of simply Backrooms and try to have some cool guests on, expand into just other general topics as well outside of Liminality. But for this episode, like I said, we're going to try to focus on those topics.
Yeah, I should probably touch on why we started this podcast too.
Yeah, so you want to go first or do you want me to go?
No, that's all you, man.
Okay. So I had been wanting to start a podcast for, I don't even know how long at this point. I would say 5+ years, but I never pulled the trigger for honestly a multitude of reasons. But I think this came together well, aside from it being the new year and like one of my serious goals for it. Just wanting to piggyback off of Liminal.bot and kind of get the setup going with this. It worked well because for one, it's in VR, as you can see, and he's really good with the interfacing and kind of what goes on behind the scenes. And I feel like together I kind of bring a sort, I feel like I can bring a conversational flow to things, obviously being the co-host. And I think together this is going to be something really cool. It was just perfect timing, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I should probably touch on that same thing too. So I pretty much thought about the podcast over the summer, and it was not originally going to be like this because this is it's pretty insane what we were able to do with this. But the original design for this was basically I was going to set up a green screen at his house, and we were just going to roll with that with the camera. But there's also another person that DM'd me. I was thinking about starting a podcast, and I told him about it, and he said I should totally do it. But I never really had a good way of setting it up because the original setup was going to be with like more expensive equipment, of course. With this, it's just a lot cheaper, pretty much, because we just have our Quest headsets on, and we could just roll with it. Because when we have more guests on, they could, of course, be wherever they want. And they could either have a PC or, of course, like a VR headset. They just pop in, take a seat, and then we can start talking to them. And it's nice to have more of a virtual setting because we could put a lot of cool stuff on the desk, like what you see here.
Yeah, essentially felt it was simplified, streamlined. It was just the right time to start things. I think me and Liminal Bot have a lot of similar interests, and our conversations tend to flow pretty well. Obviously, the first couple episodes are going to be a little rough here and there, but we're really trying to strive long term to make this something viable and just interesting. Just want to sit down, talk, share some of our thoughts and opinions, and put it online.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyhow,
especially with the advent of more virtual stuff being more prevalent nowadays, it's just a lot easier.
For sure. So, as we talked about with the setup, I think the first thing we could talk about is the Backrooms as a whole. So, as you can see, this level is the initial level on any system. It's essentially long, winding, monotonous hallways. It kind of has like a yellow scheme going to it.
Yeah.
With the lore, the lights would kind of be buzzing, but we don't hear a buzz on our end. And outside of that, do you want to start talking on some of the systems?
Man, if I heard the buzzing right now, I think I would have just quit the podcast by now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because in where I'm set up right now, I have this little space heater going. So I guess I'll kind of just attribute that to what would normally be the buzz of these fluorescent lights. But that is one of the biggest characteristics of this level. It's I think it's level 0, right? Level 0 or level 1?
Pretty much how it's, I'll probably just go into the history right now, but basically the Backrooms originated from this original 4chan post from an anonymous user. They posted a picture of this setting right here. As you can see, it matches the exact same photo from the original 4chan post. But basically, the prompt that they put for it essentially was, if you're not careful enough, then you have the possibility of no clipping out of reality into the Backrooms. And that's kind of how it started.
Cool. And yeah, this idea of no clipping, for those who are unfamiliar, it's kind of a dev term for being able to move freely throughout game levels. And the premise is that in reality, you might come across something that just looks out of place, whether it's some kind of door or wall that's just slightly uncolored or discolored. And it can happen anywhere, really. I feel like I've read some lore that stated like you don't even really need that. Like you can just be chilling and suddenly no clip into the Backrooms. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, pretty much. Like you could just be like chilling on your couch and then you're there, which is like, it would kind of suck if you had like plans that day and then you're just like in here. It's like,
that would be unfortunate because some of the lore follows that you can escape to some extent, but I kind of like the idea of not being able to escape and just being stuck in these monotonous levels and subsystems, being hunted by some of the entities. And I was reading that most of the entities aren't human and they're usually out to get you.
Yeah, pretty much. They're, for this level 0, there's one entity which is it looks like a string together like mess of just pipe cleaners, which just like chases after you pretty much. I think a lot of the Backrooms kind of lore kind of got popularized by Kane Pixel's series. I don't know if you watched that before or not, but it's he makes these different videos about the Backrooms, and I think it's in Blender or something, and then makes really nice videos with it. So that's kind of what popularized it a lot.
Oh yeah, and to piggyback off of that, for those who are familiar with the SCP Containment Breach series, you can kind of think of the entities like that. They're pretty much out to get you most of the time. There's some people that will help you that I did look at in my research, but for the most part, they can be some pretty deceptive, dangerous beings.
Yeah, most of the time they're out to get you, basically.
True. So I guess we could go on some of the history. Like you said, it was something that originated on 4chan. It's best to immerse yourself in the lore. All things given, this physical sense of the Backrooms most likely isn't entirely real, but in playing along with the lore, you can kind of immerse yourself more, kind of get a feeling for some of the ideas that people are trying to bring to the table. Yeah.
It's probably a segue into liminal spaces, I'd say. So that ties directly into all of this.
Yeah, we could talk about some liminal spaces. So I guess we should probably start with like the definition of liminality and all that.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
I think to me it means like a space of transition between two things, because a lot of the liminal spaces that people post, it's usually transitionary spaces, like if you're to walk from like one office space to the next, that could be considered like a liminal space. Or even like, regardless of physical, it could be like emotional. It could be like from when you like divorce to like when you're married to someone else or something like that.
For sure. I believe the textbook definition of liminality is, like you said, some sort of transitory period between, let's say, points A and points B. And it can definitely like bring around like an uneasiness, because for one reason or other, people don't really like to be in between things. I think people like a concrete sense of where they're at in their life. And sometimes when you're in between things, you can kind of feel like you're not where you should be.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
I'm thinking about that now. Most of life does seem to be liminal. You're not necessarily always where you want to be or who you want to be,
Yeah.
but you kind of just have to roll with it. And it's like, I find a lot of comfort in that. And like liminality to me is just the transition. It's kind of leading up to something better usually, or worse sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, like all of life could technically be considered a liminal space between like the time that you're born and then the time that you die, essentially.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So one of the points I had written in the notes here was about the fear of being forgotten. Do you think about some liminal spaces that you'd occupied, or you and some people, or you just were in for a minute that kind of resonate with you to this day?
Yeah, I'd say from my childhood when I used to go to like these like pool places pretty much, and that seems to resonate with a lot of the community. Seems like these like pools are like whenever you see them empty, which is kind of it ties into what liminality is or why people feel a certain emotion towards it, because when you're in those places and then once you see an image without people in it, then it kind of brings out that emotion.
We were kind of talking about this pre-pod too, is I think sometimes when places are robust and full of life, you don't really get a sense for the setting you're in. And what I mean by that is like, let's take, for example, like when we used to chill outside late summer night and we're just hanging, talking with the boys, like you don't really have an idea of the sense and what it brings to the event. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I feel you.
It's like in that particular moment, you're kind of just vibing with the friends. But if you were to come across that location again, I think the sense of the memory would be brought about because of the location itself, even though at first that's maybe not entirely what it was all about.
Yeah. What do liminal spaces mean to you?
At first, I kind of liked the macabre sense they brought about. I thought they were kind of eerie, and I would just see the imagery and think like, wow, that's kind of creepy. But I didn't really get too much into the psychology of it until later, until I started to sit down and think like, why do I think that's strange? Or like, what does it actually mean to me? And I think now liminal spaces evoke a lot of good memories I had. I kind of have a sense of like, you know, like the whole like rose-colored glasses idea of like when you look back in time, the memories seem better, even though they might not have been the best. It's just looking back now, it's kind of nice to remember those people, places, things, events that were had. And I guess when I see those spaces now, that's kind of the overarching idea I get from it. I kind of just reminisce for a little bit about what was, and I don't know, sometimes that does take away from the present though.
Yeah. It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of the times when I ask people that, they're like, oh, it brings up like a depression or like anxiety or something.
Yeah, that usually is the message I get from other people. But I think I do like this about myself though, that I try not to view the past for the horrible parts. I feel like I'm definitely somebody that's more like happy-go-lucky about what happened, even though objectively things weren't always the best. I kind of extrapolate like the good parts, and I'm just like, I really enjoyed that time for what it was, and like the people that were there, the emotions that were had, and I don't know, the good and the bad usually just culminates into a fond memory for me now.
Yeah. No, that's real.
What do you think about, I guess we kind of talked about this, but I'll pose the question to you, but some of the ambiguity that you get from liminality, where do you think that comes from? Why do these things have to be ambiguous? And do you think that's just or I guess, do you think that's just kind of like a surface level way of viewing these things?
I think it's more, yeah, it's a little bit of a surface level thing when people view it. Again, tying back into like why they feel it, just because they've probably been in that or somewhere similar to it before, in a similar place, and then once they see it without people, then it kind of brings that out. But I think it's even deeper than that. That's the thing. I think it's more of like, past experiences, past emotions, stuff like that.
Do you think ghosts exist in that sense of like past ghosts, whether not necessarily like as a person, but like the memory of it almost? Like, do you think places are charged with like energy of the events and people that were held within those spaces?
Now, I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I feel like there's something there. Like there's like memories or maybe something like that stays behind in those places. I don't know. It's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, this isn't something we really talked about pre-pod discussion, but if I were to answer it, I would say yes. And I think a couple of movies have captivated this well, but like, I don't know what it is about the physical sense of a location, but I do think they harbor some sense of a memory of what occurred there. And not necessarily in the sense that like the place has a mind and like it remembers like, oh shit, like this is what happened on this day and time, but more so like the tragedies and stuff. Like let's take like a prison like in Alcatraz for for example. I feel like that place would definitely be charged with the emotions and like the events that happen there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like you probably like still hear the person getting stabbed like in like the 1900s or something.
For sure. Or take, for example, like the houses we used to live in as like children too. Like I feel to some extent those places were imprinted with like the people we were then and like the things we did there.
Yeah, I agree. Especially like playgrounds or like schools. I feel like that has a lot to do with it too.
For sure. One of the other points I had here was a YouTube video I researched about the fear of being forgotten. Do you think you have a fear of being forgotten?
I think I did at first when I was first growing up, because I think it stemmed from just not being I don't know, just a very lonely person growing up. So I think it's kind of like a FOMO thing. So it's like if I was to be forgotten, or if like let's say from the perspective of like if I was waiting for the bus, but what if the bus never came? And then what if
you better start walking, buddy.
Yeah, you better start walking. You better start moving those two legs, bro. Yeah, the bus
no clipping.
The bus forgot about you like 5 years ago. It's not coming back. But yeah, I think
like, buddy, it's 10 a.m. You're late to your first class.
Yeah. I remember in my first year of college, I actually took the bus one time, but I think I was on the wrong like schedule or something, so I was just waiting there for like 30 minutes.
Dude, there's a couple of college classes I showed up for where I think I either misread the syllabus or it wasn't updated, in which I showed up to the classroom and I was like, oh my God, nobody's here right now. And I was just like, shit, like I gotta contact somebody. But yeah, that is a weird feeling of being forgotten. I don't know if I gotta think on this, because I haven't really thought of like being forgotten in that sense, because it's like we're so full of like life right now and like we have family and friends. It's kind of weird to think about a reality in which like that just didn't exist.
Yeah, I think that comes with dying too. So that kind of stems from like, do you fear death?
I think so. Just because like at this point, being alive like 24 years and just being in this game of reality, it's like I have so much like skin in the game, and for that to just go away would be kind of weird, I think.
Yeah, just for
unless like
disappear.
Yeah, unless like one of the theories being like if you die, like what if nothing carries over, no consciousness, no thought, then like in that sense, does it really matter for like you? Obviously, like other people will most likely be affected, but for your own sake, it's like, does it matter at that point?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a very plus then you could tie religion back into that, and then that's a whole rabbit hole of just lore behind that.
Do you ascribe to any religion in particular?
Not really. I think I'm more of a Maybe
Nihilist.
agnostic. Yeah, nihilist. No, I'm not. If I was a nihilist, I would not be posting on Instagram. I would not.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. I wouldn't say I'm like I ascribe to any religion. I like the ideas that a lot of them bring, and I think like it can give a good framework for different people. But I feel like religion as a whole is just not the end all be all. I think you need to like life kind of exists on a gray scale opposed to black and white, and sometimes you just need to use your own personal experience and intuitions to like reason through something.
I wish we had like a reference point sometimes. It's like can you die real quick and then like just let me know how it goes.
Yeah, it would be nice to have some kind of ultimate goal that we're all aspiring for. Whether like let's say like you were to meet the creator, assuming there is one, and he was like, or she was like, okay, you're here to reproduce.
Yeah.
Is that fulfilling to you? Would you feel like that provides you some sort of like, I don't know, fulfillment?
Yeah, I think that's more like from if we're just like separating things into just like a biological aspect, like ants are just there, just make the nest and like, provide for the queen, and then they die.
For sure.
And reproduce.
For
die,
sure.
Reproduce, die.
Yeah, biologically speaking, I guess that is a pretty important point. But like as humans, I think we have like emotional and like spiritual, physical needs that like mean a lot to us as well. You know what I mean? Whether it's like you want to get into like a meaningful relationship or like create something of importance for a business or a job. I feel like that can mean just as much too, in the sense of like reproduction.
Yeah. We should probably go back into liminal spaces. I think we got pretty fun. That's pretty good though.
Yes. Need to get a little off track here. Let's see here. So are there any points you specifically want to touch on liminality? Actually, I have some here. I guess we could talk about like the time scheme of liminality. I know in our notes we kind of had the idea of not being a past or future, but only the now. I suppose, how do you relate that to liminality?
Well, with liminality, I feel like there's no real time that exists in those spaces. That's a thing. So people kind of get like an angst from that. And then that ties also back into the fear of being forgotten. It's like there's no past, present, or future in there. It's just that in liminality. You're just in that space in between, pretty much.
Do you think that's like an easy thing or a bad thing?
Not really, but it depends how people view it at the end of the day. Like you could see it as a good thing, you could see it as a bad thing, you could see it as essentially whatever you want, but it's just what you make of it.
Because I know the idea behind a lot of meditation practices is essentially to get to the point where you don't think of a future or a past, you simply exist in the now. So I think to that regard, it can be a little calming. But like, I've been in situations where I've personally felt super present, and it's kind of enlightening, honestly, just to be where you are as you are. Have you had any experiences like that?
Have you ever felt disassociated?
I have a couple times. Yeah, it's really strange. It's really strange to feel disassociated from life as a whole. It's just like, I'm not here. The physical is here, but like mentally, I'm clocked out.
Yeah, I feel like tying back into that with liminality, whenever I feel dissociated, I feel it's kind of a weird thing, but I feel more present in a sense, like just living in the current. Like there's no past or future. It's just in that moment.
Mentally, what are you thinking at those points of dissociation?
Oh, I'm usually just chilling. I'm probably just looking at my hand. Like there's no real thoughts when I'm dissociating. That's the thing. It's just there, and that's kind of how I got into liminality. I was just very dissociated at one point in my life. I just relating to those images made me, I don't know, it was a weird thing to relate to, but I think that's how that's how I got into it. Was just dissociating.
Do you make any connections between being dissociated and living your life on autopilot?
Honestly, I feel like it's the same thing. Like, because when you're dissociated, you're you're basically just going into autopilot, like a kind of like a robot.
Yeah, I remember I had this experience in high school. I want to say it was maybe my third or fourth year, where I had the realization after a couple weeks of thinking I'm doing the same thing every day,
Yeah,
and there's essentially no like spark or like inspiration behind what I'm doing. I'm kind of a robot right now.
yeah,
And I was like, something needs to change, bro. Like, I am not tuned into my environment or the people I'm interacting with. I'm literally just waking up a husk, trying to throw on some music to dial in. Because you remember back in high school, we'd be waking up like 6 a.m., just like entirely clocked out. And it was just an ongoing cycle of that. And I think that made me realize like I need to do something that provides me fulfillment. And I think that's one of the biggest things I'm trying to get at in this year 2024 is like creative endeavors, because I think that's something that like a lot of people can find fulfillment from. It's just finding that thing that provides it.
yeah. You touched on a lot of great points there. Yeah, high school and like general schooling, it's just wake up and then put on your clothes, go do your stuff, come back home, probably go to bed, and repeat the same day over and over again.
Eat a little bit of hot dog rice. Hit a little wrestling practice, lacrosse.
Yep.
Do you have any good high school experiences that relate to liminality, or I guess some of the psychology behind the Backrooms?
I'd say back in high school, I used to go on these walks around our neighborhood, and I felt like there was always something there when I was just walking around. Just not like a person or anything, because like then I'd be running. But I felt like just walking in those empty spaces, just really made me feel a little bit more alive in a sense, because I was just alone, just walking, and then I would come across these spaces. Never even took any pictures back then because I didn't even know about the concept of, like liminal spaces or like liminal space photography or anything like that. How about you?
I don't really have any like liminal spaces per se that come to mind in the physical sense, but I think even to today, I'm dealing with like a lot of the consequences of having what I thought were good memories at the time and just trying to consolidate that now. Like I used to have this buddy's house we would go over to, and there'd be some points where like everybody was there, bro, just like having a good time, having a drink, chilling, just being like super present. And that would happen pretty frequently. Like it was a regular thing. So you could think at the time, like, yeah, I was having a blast. And when I think about that time now, it's a little disheartening just because like I know the spaces are still there, and I can conjure the image of the person I was then and the settings. And when I think about it, that invokes not even liminality, because that's kind of the transition, but I guess it is liminality because it's kind of the transition between consolidating like who I was then with who I am now. And it's like, God, like I really miss doing some of those things with those people. But at the same time, it's like, all right, bro, you got this fucking 9 to 5. Yeah. You got to snap back to reality. You got relationships. You got bills you have to pay for. Like, stop reminiscing about high school, bro.
Yeah.
That was then. This is now. I'm roughly at this point, like 6 years removed from it. So it's just kind of rough because like it was just nice to not have the burdens of the world that like, the older you get, the more responsibilities you take on.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nice to just reminisce to a time when it's like I could just party and fire off with the boys on like a Thursday night. And now it's like, kind of miss that. But more so the people and like the memories, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of good kind of liminal I would say, yeah, liminality ties into kind of how we grow up, kind of the people we meet, friendships, I'd say. More of just memories from like a past time, maybe.
It does. And it's definitely made me question nowadays, like when I'm doing something, will there be like an aspect of a memory that's formed here that like I'm going to think about in the future? Even though sometimes in the moment's like, damn, this shit kind of sucks, but like I kind of want to go home. But like maybe in like 5 years, I'll be like, oh man, like that trip was really nice. Like I think about the recent California trip we had, and it was super dope in the moment. But I feel like looking back on that in a couple years, like the goldenness of the moment is really going to resonate with me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Any kind of like good trip or anything like that, it's you just think about those memories just flooding back into your head. It's like, oh my God, that was like the peak.
I know it's almost kind of, how do I word this? Like a crutch to have the ability to form memories as humans, because they're really nice to have, but like, do you ever reminisce on them too much, do you think?
Do I?
Yeah.
Not so much. I used to just think about them a lot more than I do now. But I think just recently with a lot of the responsibilities like school and of course we got work coming up, that's kind of I don't know, it's kind of like a set like two separating barriers, which kind of ties back into liminality. It's like I'm in this in between space of just like there's a lot of fun in the past, but like now I have a lot of responsibilities to get to now. So it's hard.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes you just have to dial it in and be like, well, this is the current moment. And don't get me wrong, like great shit is still happening now, but
yeah,
I guess just looking back, it's kind of nice to reminisce sometimes. And I think this is a pretty good segue point for what we're talking about with this slow cancellation of the future. And what I mean by that is, do you think people are upset with the future as in the now? So let's say we go back in time 5 years. You think about what was going to happen 5 years from then. Do you think people are upset with their present? And maybe that's why liminality is kind of, in a sense, like taking off and gaining some traction?
Yeah, I agree because let's just say from just like a world perspective, things feel like they're getting a lot more crazier in today's life, that it feels like it was a lot easier back then.
It does.
And you say like the 2000s maybe, or like a lot of people from like the 80s or 90s are kind of they're really fueled by liminality in a sense, because they feel like those are like the golden ages, and then now it's like going into like Dante's Inferno right now.
Yeah, we're in hell right now.
Yeah, the whole like world.
Yeah, I
feels
wonder.
like it's going to hell, honestly.
I wonder if that was kind of the golden era of Gen Z. And what comes before Gen Z? Is it Gen something, or is it millennials, right?
Yeah, millennial.
Yeah, I wonder if like the 80s, 90s, and 2000s are kind of like that golden era for our generation, because like obviously if you talk to like some older people, they'll be like, oh, like the 60s, the 50s. Yeah. So maybe it's just a repeat of history. Maybe this isn't anything new, because maybe the people that are born today, what is it, like Generation Alpha or some BS like that?
It's like Gen X or something like that.
Something like that. Maybe those people are going to think the same things and be like, wow, bro, the 2020s were a time to be alive. But
no, I actually
obviously
did
in our position.
I did like 2020. 2020 was a pretty good year.
2020 was a vibe. We learned collectively how to sell. We became businessmen. We were on our Patrick Bateman shit that year.
Just to give some reference, yeah, that was during COVID. Of course, people know, but yeah, me and Gabe, we would sell a lot of our stuff from our house on this app called OfferUp, and we made a pretty good check off that. So it was a pretty good year.
Yep. Essentially an app where you list something, but most of the time you're going to get a third of its price once it's sold. But it was a marketplace. And if any of you guys were selling things on OfferUp in that year. I'd love to hear about it, just because compared to today, when I look at OfferUp, it seems so much more dead than back then. Because, bro, I remember at one point I was able to sell an HDMI cable, and I don't even think that would happen today by any stretch of imagination. Like, I would just post things, instantly get like anywhere from like 10 to 20 views off rip, couple offers, and I'm like, dude, this is something I found in like the shed. Like, I haven't thought about this. Nobody's thought about this thing for years. And I think people were on a sort of like buying high back then.
Yeah, I think it was because everything was just so like out of stock pretty much. So you had like, I think I was like reselling like Xboxes at one point just for fun.
Yeah, that's actually when I bought my Series X, and I think I purchased it upwards of $950 plus. And it's crazy because you can get those for around like $500 now. But like, if you were live and understood the context back then of when there was a console shortage, like Xboxes and PlayStations were a commodity. Like, at that point, damn near worth more than gold. Like, it was crazy.
Or the PS5s, they would sell out like in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, if you had a PS5, like, you might want to lock your doors because you might be getting robbed soon. like I remember when I bought my Xbox, it was this funny situation because I texted the dude, and I think you were there as well, when we pulled up to like the Walmart parking lot, and I was like, yo, bro, like, can you verify this for me? Because if I'm sold some trash for like $975, like, this is going to be a real L on my part.
I remember we were in the parking lot, and I was like, open the box, and like they had already left. I was like, oh, there's probably going to be like a bunch of rocks in there or something.
Yeah, it was rough because the entire box is already sealed and stuff. And I mean, to our credit, like, it did look pretty legit. The stickers were like Microsoft based, so we were like, okay, most likely scenario, it's probably real, but scammers do exist, and they're scammers because they're good at what they do. So who knows? I might have just gotten like you said, a boulder in there or something.
All right.
So are there any movies that come to mind when you think of liminality?
Yeah, I think we talked about The Shining, and I haven't gone too in depth into it. I definitely watched the movie, but I think a lot of liminality comes from that. If you want to explain on your end, because I'm assuming you did like more of a deep dive into it.
Yeah. So The Shining as a whole is great for those of you who want to get into the subject of liminality, because it really lays the framework for a lot of different things. So in the physical sense, there's this hotel called the Overlook Hotel, in which Jack, his son Danny, and what was her name? Wendy, right?
Yeah, something like that.
He was essentially hired to care for the place in this snowstorm. And as the movie goes on, even at the beginning of the movie, you can tell this is a pretty large space. It's kind of long, winding hallways. And if you do some analysis on the movie, you'll actually find like the hallways don't actually make sense. Like, they kind of intersect and intertwine in ways that wouldn't be possible to make. So that was one part. But I think what stood out to me with the movie was like, or a good point that I found in my research, was how isolated they were from things.
Yeah.
I actually didn't really think about that on my first watch, but these people were essentially stuck in a snowstorm while Jack, the caretaker's mind, is just slowly dwindling into madness. And Wendy and Danny kind of just have to try to survive the madness. And the place plays a huge role in the movie. It's kind of the antagonist in a way, because it's been charged with the memories of the ghosts who have been there. And to some extent, those ghosts do come alive and try hunting them down.
He was an alcoholic.
What did you pick up on your first watch in the movie? Historically, he was an alcoholic, but he stated that he wasn't drinking anymore because there was an incident with Danny in which he'd injured him.
Yeah.
So I think one of the talking points is like, I think at some point he did drink in the movie, honestly.
But I feel like there wasn't any alcohol in there, right? That's kind of why he started
I want to say no.
going mad a little bit.
I want to say no because I think they'd said they'd like cleared the place of it beforehand, in which he was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool with me." But I remember like in the bar scene, yeah, you know, he was packing a couple of shooters in that in that bag of his. But yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, highly recommend. I mean, we could touch more on it, but I don't want to give like a whole synopsis of the movie. It's just the hotel was very liminal in the sense like there's so many like long winding hallways. They're kind of alone. It's kind of in a desolate area, and it's essentially abandoned to some extent for that reason.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, what did you pick up from the movie on your first go around?
I think so when I watched it, it was a while back, so I can't really recall too much about it. But then I watched kind of like one of those movie synopsises or like breakdowns of it. I think it seems like the entire like architecture of it is kind of like breaking reality in a sense, because like don't like it feels like it's more like a maze sort of, right? Or like some stuff breaks reality in a sense, or I think like the elevator was like on the wrong side of it or something like that.
For sure. There's a lot of anomalies in the movie that like don't parallel what should be happening in reality. I don't remember what exactly happened with the elevator. Are you talking about where there was the scene with like the blood flowing from the side of it?
Yeah, it might have been that, or like I think the elevator was just like on a side of like the wall or something that didn't even make any sense to like even be there.
Yeah, so kind of just tying back to like architecturally, this place was not sound. I don't know if Jack or whatever point of view the camera was from was just off, or whether it was actually like that. But like you could just tell in watching the movie that there's some off-putting elements that are just strange as a whole, I thought.
Yeah, it was a weird movie for sure.
I guess we could kind of segue into some of the questions here and then wrap up, because we're actually at 42 minutes. So do you want to segue from there?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So
you got the questions pulled up, right?
Let's see. I guess we could start. Well, we kind of already touched on what do liminal spaces mean to me. Like we said, it's a transitory state between a lot of different things. It can be like where you're at developmentally, career-wise. It could be a space. They kind of invoke an uneasiness. And then I guess from there we could talk about, I guess, a personal one for you. What was the inspiration behind creating liminal content and nostalgia and the inspiration behind your page?
Yeah, of course. So I started the page back in, I think it's December of 2021. I was in my freshman year of college, and I would at nighttime, I didn't actually know that many people, so I would like skate around like downtown Reno, and then I would just start taking photos of just like these empty places, and then I think I was just doing it just for fun. But then I found this one page called Strangely Familiar Places on Instagram, and that kind of tied back into kind of like empty spaces and liminality as a whole. But then also at the same time, I think I was a little down like emotionally, so I think I was kind of relating to those liminal spaces in a sense. There's just like that emptiness. But I'd say nostalgic wise, it's always been kind of an interesting thing, especially with like gaming nostalgia. I think I was really into that at the moment. So that was one thing. It's kind of why I tied like both like liminality and nostalgia, because I feel like they go along so well.
I think from the outside looking in, at that time that you were in college, do you kind of feel like you were like making a sort of transition at that time, like with where you were in your life?
Yeah, I'd say so, because I was it was a whole new city, because yeah, you were there too. So I was just kind of navigating around places, trying to find my way. trying to see how I fit into that space in my life.
How do you think you integrated with your pothead roommates?
Oh God, those guys, they were not fun to live with. I'll tell you that. Because they basically just put me with random people in this 4-bedroom apartment, and like it's like, okay, so now I'm gonna have to live with these dudes, and they're not the cleanest people, so that's that was not a fun experience.
For sure. And I think this other one ties pretty well from the poll, but the idea of loneliness. I mean, how do you relate to it? Have you had experiences with loneliness? And I suppose, how do you try to work around those feelings?
Yeah, so I think going along with loneliness, I feel like growing up, I didn't know like a lot of people. So I think my escape from that was just being by myself. And I think it helped me a little bit. It's just like an escape from reality. It's like without people, then it's just me at the end of the day. But how would you say you relate to loneliness? Or have you had any experiences with it?
I think for me, naturally, loneliness is a very integral part of my life, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable to me a lot of the times, because I'm the kind of person that kind of relishes in my loneliness, because it gives me a lot of time to like touch base with where I'm at and what I want to do. And I'm not the type of person that always likes to be lonely. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my friends, family, hanging out, like making meaningful interaction with them. But at the same time, I do feel like a lot of people should and could get in touch with their loneliness side to kind of sort through some of what's in their head, because I don't want to use it as a form of like escapism by any means. Like, I like to be intentional with my loneliness. Like, I think that's why I categorize myself as like an introvert now, because I'm like, I've recognized I'm not the extroverted person that I once wanted to be. And I've kind of learned to embrace like the loneliness, like Kevin Parker lonerism parts about me. And I think that's a great thing personally.
Do you think some extroverts could probably benefit from it? Tapping into that introverted side of them?
Well, that's funny, because like asking me as an introvert, dude, sometimes people talk way too much and want to be way too in the mix. I'm like, bro, you need to go just chill in your room and just, I don't know. I feel like there's like a lot of what you could find out about yourself in the quiet moments of life. I feel like sometimes when you're just too in it, it's like, is that really who you are? Because I think a good gauge of like happiness is determining how you are when you're just alone in your house or in your room. And if you ask a lot of people that question, I feel like you'll get a lot of mixed answers. It's like, for you, like, let's just say you're home alone. Like, are you okay with yourself? Are you content?
Yeah, that's money. That's like the golden hour right there.
That's what I'm saying too. But I'll ask other people, and it's really uneasy for them. Like, they almost in a sense need to be surrounded by other people. And I wonder if that's like, are you running from something like mentally, or have you not tackled with some of the issues that you might be facing internally?
Do you remember that one scene from Euphoria? I think it was like Sydney Sweeney or something like that. I think that's the actor's name is, and like she's like smiling in the mirror. She's like putting like a fake smile. I feel like that's what extroverts are like.
Yeah, I know the exact thing you're talking about. And I wanted that too. I'm like, bro, like when you're alone, like, are you just pulling a Sydney Sweeney and just like trying to put a show on for everyone else? Like, I don't know. I think that's like why, if you look at like our friends collectively, a lot of them are introverts too, because we understand one another. And I think they have a very deep understanding of themselves too. And I definitely have some extroverted friends too, and like they're dope, but I don't know, it's kind of nice to have that like that connection with other introverts. I think
extroverts are fueled by this kind of interaction sometimes. I feel like it's like their form of gasoline in a sense.
Do you think so? And then when they're alone, they just don't have like the fire to the fuel.
Yeah, so you just got to keep on like refueling it with interactions and people. It's like an
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Just pulling a Sydney Sweeney in the
pulling the City Sweeney all over again.
I think you want to wrap up with one more question, then probably call it good from there.
Yeah, you might need to pull up a question.
Maybe we could do a little more of a. No, I got it. We could do a little more of a casual one.
Yeah.
So I know we've had a lot of discussion about this ourselves, but one of the poll questions was vape versus cigs versus Zyn, and what's the best nicotine consumption?
Oh boy, this is a good one. I know exactly who asked this too. So, what's it? Vapes, cigs, or Zyn?
Vape, cigs, Zyn, and then the best nicotine consumption. I think a good way of going around this would be maybe breaking down each of the categories,
Yeah.
our personal thoughts and ideas and experiences, and then determining the best consumption.
Yeah. Let's start with vapes. Those things are way too good. Like, that feels like something that is way too good for you. Like the little buzz you get. It's, oh my God, it's like heaven.
Yeah, straight up, I'm not going to be over here on my high horse and be like, oh, those are some horrible products filled with Chinese chemicals, which essentially they are.
Yeah.
But at the root of it, those things are so tasty. They're so addictive. You derive a sense of like being from vapes once you've been on them for so long, I think.
They're like a gold mine. Like, especially those,
They are.
it's like really flavorful ones. I remember when, I should probably add some like background to it. So me and Gabe, we were pretty much, we were really addicted to vaping at one point in our lives. And then we would just wake up, hit it, gotta study, gotta hit it. Like, it was like it was like clockwork almost.
It was. And there were like different eras of vaping too. And it's rough too, because like, it seems like a lot of Gen Zers kind of picked up these like disposable vaping as like a lifestyle. So it's hard once like all your friends are doing it. It's like, especially like if you're drinking, you just want to catch a quick Nick buzz.
Yeah.
It's too tempting. But the problem with that is like, it follows you too. Like, it's not just like, it's hard to make it into a casual thing. Like, once you're into vaping, it kind of has you by the ass, essentially.
Yeah. It's like you can't escape it. It's like you have that like muscle memory of just like humans have just evolved to just like pick up the vape and
That's one funny point we were talking about is like, are humans evolving to just be nicotine consumers?
Yeah. Vaping, it's
I wonder.
It's up there. It's definitely up there.
It's up there, and the tier list. It's probably like S tier in terms of pure personal experience, but I do feel like the downsides do not make it worth it for anyone to start or continue.
Yeah, from a health standard, those things are probably terrible for you. I should
For sure,
and then probably they are terrible for you.
Definitely. I think we'll begin to see some of the repercussions within the next couple of years. But after that, we have cigs. How do you feel about cigs?
I think cigs are good when you're drinking. That's the only way I'll actually rip it out. Those things are so good.
Are you a Camel Crush type, menthol, American Spirit?
I think I'm more of a Camel Crush kind of guy, honestly. Those those Camel Crushes, they're like a vape in cigarette form.
That's funny. I was talking to Matt before this, and I was on this. I went out with a friend yesterday, and we were talking about cigs, and it's funny because we both related. Like, yeah, a cig when you're drinking is absolute money. It's probably top 3 human experiences. And I'm not trying to condone smoking to anyone, but if you're of age and your buddy happens to have one, you know, do what you may. But yeah. But I do think health wise, like, cigs are probably the worst for you. I remember when I was doing them a little more consistently, that's definitely when I started to develop like a cough and kind of just some adverse health side effects from it. So I realized like that was not something I could do long term.
Yeah, I think those cigs, especially when you're drunk, it feels like what are those people in like I think they were like California, those like gold like miners or whatever it is. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels like you like struck the gold when you hit a cig, like when you're drunk.
I know, especially with those crushes, you just bite the ball and it's just euphoria. It's like, oh, it's too good. And then finally we have Zins. Now Zins are, I do too right now. Yeah. Zins are, it seems like a hot commodity right now.
Yeah, I think because it's derived from that Swedish, was it Swedish snus? I think that's how you say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
I think
derived
so.
from that, and then they just brought it over to America, and like the manufacturer of Zins is actually like from Sweden, so I guess we got a little bit of.
Well, I think the Swedish snus is still the actual like tobacco leaf, like the darker stuff, right?
Wait, really? No, I think that's dip.
Yeah.
Is that not dip?
Those aren't the same thing.
No, I feel like you're talking.
I thought Swedish. Well, I'll have to research this after, but I'm pretty sure Swedish snus is not what Zin is, because Zin is essentially okay, I guess we should provide some context before we explain this, because not everyone knows what Zins are. But Zins are essentially a nicotine lozenge. They come in packs of like 15 or 20?
Yeah, I think it's 15.
And it's essentially a synthetic nicotine in these little individually packaged pouches. And you basically throw one in your upper or lower lip, let it settle for anywhere from like... Me too. I'm personally team upper decky, which means upper lip. And it basically runs you give or take 30, 45 minutes, and then you just toss it out. And that's it. But they come in a variety of flavors too, mostly being mint derived, which for those living in the US is an absolute tragedy, because at one point it's like, I kind of want something other than mint.
Yeah.
But that is the hand we've been dealt. But I think between
Oh yeah, I was gonna say overall, I think Zins are probably might be the best, or the gum, or maybe like if you just like slap on like a patch.
For sure. I think health wise, for those who are trying to be health conscious, I think Zins, or maybe like Liminal Bot said, the patches would be best. But I think if I had to rate them, it's hard to, because they're all the best in different situations. Outside of vapes, I try not to touch them too much anymore. And honestly, I don't derive the same pleasure I do out of them as I used to back then.
Yeah.
But I suppose if I had to rate them right now, I'd probably go Zin, Sig, Vape.
Yeah, I'd say mine is pretty similar to that, because the vaping, I think yeah, because I've been like clean for like almost like a year and some change, and like I think if I was to hit that again, I think I would just go back in the same like circle of just addiction.
Maybe not, because I started my streak at the same time as you, but there was an evening in which I was hitting one a couple times, but like since then I haven't, and I think I'm around like 2/3 of a year clean from vaping. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I know I might have to start vaping after this, but
yep.
I think that's a good spot to wrap up on. Do you want to add anything else?
No, I think we're good. That was a pretty good podcast.
Cool. Well, for those of you who stuck it out through the end, thanks for watching. We're going to try our best to improve on this. And I know for me, I definitely want to get a little more comfortable on the mic, because this isn't something I'm accustomed to, but we're going to keep doing more research, try to get some guests, try to add some cool things to the table. And then if you guys have anything that you want to see done, please let us know.
I should probably add one thing. I think maybe in the next maybe 3 or maybe 4 episodes, I might just change the map to the pool rooms. You know what I'm talking about?
No, what is that?
The pool rooms is also like a backrooms level. I think you've probably seen some pictures of it, but it's basically just like a pool park, what it looks like. So this might change up. And then I think for gaming episodes, like if we're talking about Skyrim nostalgia, I think I got a couple of questions about that. So I might put us in like a Skyrim map, and then we'll just we could change
For
our
sure.
avatars, and then that's it's just nice being VR chat because we could be whatever we want.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of themes going forward. I think we want to touch on some comedy, some video game stuff, some era-based stuff. But we'll keep running the polls and we'll try to determine where to go from here.
Cool. Nice. Looks like we can wrap it up.
Cool.
See you guys.
That's it. See ya.